Hey, this is Peter Lee, the director of Angelfish, starring Princess Nokia and Jimi Stanton. You're listening to So Booking Cool with Jewel B.
Welcome to So Booking Cool. It's Jewel B.
In part one,
Today's guest is a writer, director, and producer. His new debut feature film, Angelfish, is a 90s love story set in the Bronx, starring Princess Nokia and Jimi Stanton. He is Peter Lee.
Hey there, how are you doing?
Hi, very well. And again, like I told you before, congratulations on Angelfish.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
You're very welcome. And tell us, Peter, what drew you to film?
Wow, that's a big question. What drew me to film? From a young age, it's always been the movie theater, the cinema is where I've always been kind of I go to kind of escape the world and kind of escape, I don't know how to say it, like escape everything, get into a new world, experience new things, like growing up in Ireland, it's a smaller country, and I remember growing up watching all these American movies, thinking about how big the world was and how different people were and all that kind of thing. So from a very young age, I kind of saw that, and I think I was actually also inspired from my father, who also, from a very young age, he grew up in like a really, really tough part of Ireland and Dublin, and he would always tell me about going and like getting away from his troubles and in the movie theater, and he went religiously, and then he kind of brought that over to me, and like took me to the movie theater from a very, very young age, and then I just fell in love completely.
Wow. So was there a particular genre that you liked, or it didn't matter in movies?
It was always me and my father going to the movies. So it was like I always loved what he loved. So it was like all that kind of crime stuff, the kind of things that boys and their fathers like to go and see. But yeah, I realized very quickly that I loved all types of movies. I loved movies with serious themes. I've always gravitated to things that talk about the big things in life and resonate on a bigger scale. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So when did you realize that you wanted to pursue film professionally?
That's a great question. So I was actually in studying religious studies at university, and it was about in the middle of my degree. I realized that although I enjoyed religious studies and although I enjoyed like the kind of path that I thought I would be going on, I thought I'd do religious studies and then go and work in a company or work in a business. And I didn't know what, but I was just kind of figuring it out. But then when I realized that really wasn't the path that I wanted to go on, I kind of thought, okay, well, if I could do anything, what would I do? And from my perspective, like being a filmmaker and being a film director was such an outlandish idea. Cause I'm from Ireland, and like at that age, like when I was, not many people can name lots and lots of directors. I genuinely thought about it like, well, being a film director, being a big film director is as difficult as like being an astronaut. I genuinely was like, who does that? So, but then I realized I kind of pushed myself into thinking, you know what? Why don't I actually give it a go? Why don't I open up my kind of horizons a bit and try it out and see what I could do? So I left the day I finished university. I handed in all my coursework. I didn't have any exams. I handed in all my coursework. I think it was a May 12th. No, it was May 12th. And I handed in all my coursework, and then May 13th I flew to New York to do a film course. And that's where it all began.
Wow. So even though it was clear to you that this was really what you wanted, was there any doubt, Peter, about going after your dream?
Oh, yes, of course. Because there's instability in film, and it's like one of the, from my experience, both looking in and now looking at it from the inside, it's such a competitive industry, and it's so like difficult to find your way, especially as a director. There's no direct path to being a director, which is ironic. It's all like, I know directors that have come through the theater. I know directors have come through film school, but then have taken a long time. People have come through working in other aspects of the industry. There's no direct path. So there was a bit of course, there's a bit of trepidation because, like, it's a goal where the route to get there isn't like 100% clear, and every route is different. Every director, every filmmaker finds their own way, and you can't look at, say, like, you can't look at Martin Scorsese and go, well, he did this, this, and this, so that's all I need to do, because it never works like that, because the industry is changing and the opportunities are changing.
Mm-hmm. That's very true. Like, the industry is always changing. Were you able to find, like, especially when coming to New York, other people who were aspiring filmmakers too, that you formed relationships with? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for sure. So I first came over. So I studied at the London Film School for a while, and then but I actually dropped out of that film school because I sort of felt like I wasn't getting the education and direction that I needed. And then I actually also studied the National Film School in the UK, which is this amazing film school with, like, really, really talented filmmakers and really talented teachers, and also they've got a lot of connections. So I met a lot of great people there. And then when I came over to America, like, the film schools that I've been in had been quite international. And so I kind of already had a couple of people that I knew that had gone to school with me in London and had moved back to New York. And I was like, this is the perfect environment to kind of jump in and have a couple of connections. But then the thing that was different for me moving from London to New York was the opportunity and the ability to collaborate here was beyond my, like, wildest dreams. I was working in London trying to kind of make my way in film, and I was making little advertising things and brand videos and corporate videos, and I was kind of grinding like everyone does, but I was like, is this really what I got into filmmaking for? You know, I made this big decision to get into film, to tell stories, and here I am kind of making little brand videos that what's going on, why, how have I gotten here? And it was the opportunity and the people that I was working with, and my career completely changed when I moved to New York. So yeah, it was a big opportunity, and yeah.
How did you know that you were more so interested in movies over television?
Oh, well, I definitely don't want to box myself in terms of movies and TV, because I can see myself in about 3 to 5 years maybe making a TV series. I have one kind of brewing in the back of my mind, as all kind of artists do, like they're thinking about their projects in the future. But that being said, there is it's actually funny because I kind of have to, over in America, have to kind of alter my vernacular, and I always refer to the movies as going to the cinema, but I know that over here it's going to the theater or going to the movie theater. But I think that's the critical word, I suppose, with the difference between film and TV, is that it's the thing that you most fall in love with. Like, the films you probably deepestly love are cinema. You know, they're things that are intended to be seen in a dark theater on a huge screen with an audience around you, like creating that communal experience, and they're thought through, and they're thought through in the most detailed way by artists who are making this singular piece of work that they've poured everything into, and I think that shows in some of our favorite movies. And so that's kind of one of the reasons why I was gravitated so much to film. But as I said, the standard of TV and the kind of work that's happening in TV at the moment for a filmmaker and for a writer and a producer is so attractive because of the opportunity to tell a story over 10 hours, for example, like versus an hour and a half, 2 hours, 3 hours in a movie. So yeah, so I love them both, but definitely I was gravitating towards cinema because of that feeling, that effect that you get when you're sitting in the movie theater.
I like that you say cinema. Like, I know that it isn't used that much over here, but yeah, it's great cinema. Yeah, there's people that still use that too.
Yeah.
So Peter, I know you said that you're not interested in boxing yourself in. So would you ever act, because you've done a lot of other different aspects of film?
I every now and then I think maybe I should act, and then I immediately that like voice of complete honesty and truth in my head goes, "Do not do it, Peter. That is a freight train directly to a terrible performance." I've known from a very young, I've known that I can't act. I was reading a book yesterday about directing, and a director was saying about how all directors are able to act because they need to be able to do that to coax a performance out of an actor. Mm-hmm. And I was like, well, I know for sure that's not true because I cannot act to save my life. I am terrible. I was in one short film in film school once, just this one time, and it was only my left foot that was in the film, and I was terrified. I literally was terrified. I was kind of the part of the film that I had to be in was the foot needed to fall through the frame. It was somebody falling down, and genuinely my face, nothing above my knee was in frame, and I was terrified and I was anxious, and I was like, wow, if this is the way I am in front of camera when it's just my foot, then I think that I should keep to staying behind the camera.
Do you have a preference between directing and writing?
That's a great question. That's a really great question. If I had to choose, I would definitely say directing. One of the things I love most is actually working with actors. I know I say that saying like I would be a terrible actor, but I think that that's one of the greatest parts of the job for me, sitting on set, working with an actor or working in a rehearsal room with an actor to break down their character and figure out their motivations and then learn from their creativity as well. That was one of the things that was so great on Angelfish, was that I intentionally tried to make it as collaborative as possible with the actors and tried to kind of free them up in a way that normally they're not used to. Normally, so for example, on scripted TV, generally it's stand here, hit your mark, do the lines, do these lines, this is the scene, we need to move on, let's do this. And I kind of came into the rehearsal period and talked to all the actors and said, this isn't like any other thing you've shot recently. This is completely improvised, and I want you, not completely improvised, but I want you guys to be able to take what's on the page and run with it and go with it, and in a way that you should feel free, because if you do something that doesn't work, we can just do it again, and but the most important thing is that you feel the creativity that leads to authenticity in the performance. So yeah.
And with Angelfish, which I had the pleasure of watching, I have to say it does feel very natural. It seems like the actors and the characters are just acting in a way that is natural. You know, You don't feel like you're watching something that's scripted.
Yeah.
So I read that the title Angelfish was inspired by a documentary that you watched about fish. Can you talk about that?
Oh, of course. Yeah. Wow. I can't believe that's already gotten out. That's so funny because every now and then I try and dodge that question, because just for my own, I like the title is unusual, but I kind of like the mystery behind it, because the movie's not falling in love, or do you know what I mean? It's not it's kind of got a more mysterious name, and I really like that aspect. I'm impressed that it's already gotten out in the world why it's named that way. But yeah, I was watching a documentary in the writing process, and I was kind of, the whole process of writing and exploring a film is this huge in-depth thing, and you kind of see this big piece of work in your mind. And I was watching this documentary about these fish, and specifically these angelfish, and they were saying about how this breed of fish, the angelfish, when they meet, they mate for life, and they stick together and defend each other like crazy, basically. And I was thinking about this, and I was like, wow, these two, and also if you have a look at the angelfish, they're the most brilliant, beautiful fish you've ever seen. And I was like, they have these colorful bodies and these tails that flick up, and it's so beautiful. Seriously, Google angelfish right now, you're fall in love. And I saw the description of how they relate to each other as partners, and then the description of, and seeing them in the image, and I was like, well, this is exactly what these young people are. they're these two really vibrant young people, and when they fall in love, they meet, and they essentially mate for life. They come together, and once they've met, their entire life changes, and there's a bond made. So that's why I was inspired to call it Angelfish.
And where did there seems to be a yellow theme with the Angelfish film as well.
Wow.
What inspired that?
Oh, wow, that's a great question. That's a really great question. I think it was from the very beginning, and no one has ever asked me that question before, which I take my head off to you, Jill.
Oh, thank you.
I think that it's a tonal thing. You know, I think that the artwork and even the graphics, I'm very kind of hands-on in terms of the art and making sure everything aligns with the tones and the themes of the film. And I felt like there is an element of purity, authenticity, naturalism, reality kind of, and also purity in a way of like almost optimism. You know, it's like there's difficult things in life, but there's optimism in the world, and that's kind of, and I tried to distill that into all of the artwork and the tone of all of the artwork going forward. And there was that sense of like with this, if you see the Angelfish title, it's like this beautiful handwritten font.
Yes.
And the yellow kind of evokes something a bit pure, a bit more optimistic, and that's kind of where we were going for there, rather than say like a gritty kind of dark, you know, Angelfish. It just evoked the tone in a way that was bigger and felt bigger. Yeah.
Now, how did the casting for Angelfish work, and was it similar to the other films that you've worked on in the past in terms of getting the casting done? Did you work with a casting director, or did you, since it's your film, were you in charge of that?
So it was kind of a dual process whereby we worked with an amazing casting director called Emily Fleischer, who works with Susan Shopmaker, who's this amazing casting director in New York and has casted like amazing films. And Emily has worked on a lot of these films, and she was kind of taking another step up into leading this project. And so Emily found some of the most incredible talent that I've seen. Like there's a guy called Stanley Simons in the movie who she brought him in for the role of Connor and sent us his audition, and it was like, it's probably one of the greatest auditions I've ever seen. Genuinely, it was flawless and emotional and perfect. And so she casted a lot of the film. But one thing that we did, I always knew with the film that the love story and the relationship between the characters, the Ava and the Brendan character, was going to be everything. The film was going to hang on that relationship. You don't go, like, if you go and see a romance movie and the couple in the movie aren't like natural and romantic together, then you check out, you know. If the relationship is the heart of the movie, then they've got to be perfect together. So our perspective I actually started looking for actors specifically for the Ava role, because I knew, which is the role that Princess Nokia plays, because I knew that we needed somebody who who was from the area, from New York, had the experience, because I knew we were going to do a lot of improvisation and a lot of the actors bringing their understanding of the world into the film. I was basically looking for who is the most talented, like, actor or actress that you have never seen in your life. I want, like, on screen. I wanted people to, like, go, where has this actor been in my life? This is the game-changing performance. I wanted it to be like a breakout performance role. And then somebody I was working with sent me a video of Princess Nokia in an interview. And obviously she's an amazing, like, hugely successful artist. But I watched this video, and they were saying, listen, look at this video, because there's something in the way that she's talking, there's a sensitivity in the way that she's talking, that is really interesting. So I watched it, and from that moment, I saw exactly what they were saying, and I was like, this woman, this artist, has this ability to access a vulnerability that is so unique and so authentic. And I was like, I saw it and I was like, man, that is the Ava. That's the character Ava. She, inadvertently in a small interview where she was vulnerable for a few moments, showed me everything I needed to see in the Ava character. And from then I was like, well, we have to get her. So we started kind of talking to her and meeting with her and talking to her people and everything like that. And it kind of, we sent her the script, and thankfully she loved the script, and she loved the idea that she could take, for her debut performance, she could take this initial kind of idea of a character and build it into something that, like, build it herself, because she's obviously incredibly creative and talented. And what she did was taking the character of Ava and bringing it to the Ava that you see on screen was incredible. And so once we had her, I said to Emily, the casting director, now find me the greatest, like, young actor that you possibly find. Mm-hmm. And they have to be able to be as vulnerable and as authentic, but also as soulful as she is, so that their characters match. And then Emily brought in Jimi, and he blew us all away.
Those are some very strong performances in Angelfish. I know you had to be proud, like, when it all came together.
Oh, man.
Including the supporting cast, too.
Yeah, like Stanley and Aaron. I just want to say another word on Jimi. Like, Jimi he is like, that we always knew, like, the opening scene of the movie is Jimi walking down the street going to work, right? Mm-hmm. And so when we were talking about it, and Emily Fleischer, the casting director, said to me, if there's any doubt with Jimi, which there wasn't, but if there was any doubt, I know that this guy, that you can hang an entire movie on this guy if you needed to. Like, this guy, he will hold the audience in that opening scene. He has this magnetism, and he will hold the audience for that first few minutes while we're following through his life. And and he did, and he's absolutely incredible. And I'm so excited for everything. Like, I genuinely feel a little bit like lightning in a bottle, like with Princess Nokia and Jimi and Stanley and some of the other actors in the movie, that we're like catching them at the start of their career. We're catching these amazing performances at the start of these huge careers, and I'm like, wow, I feel so privileged to have worked with these actors.
Yes, they're rising, continuing to rise. Which, by the way, you're continuing to rise as well. How would you say you've grown, Peter, since your earlier films and short films?
How would I say I've grown? I from the very beginning, I think that one of the things you learn early on is how collaborative film is, and the more and more I've gone into the films, the more films I've made, I've kind of opened myself up more and more and more to collaboration, and that's what film is. Film is about collaboration. No one can make a film on their own, and so I've kind of I've developed in that way, and also in the way that I see stories, and in the way that I see who the films I make are for. Like, I remember one of my very first short films I sent to my dad, who, like, as I said, my dad is like the hook for all of this, like all of my career in film. I'm like inspired by going to the movies with him as a child, and I sent him my first short film, and he said, like, in a real, like, deep Irish accent, he said, yeah, I like it, but I don't really know what happened. I didn't really understand it. And I was devastated. I was like, oh my God, I made this whole thing and put all this effort. And my father, who I see as the kind of the bigger audience, the movie theater full of 300 people, not just the single person I'm making it for, he didn't really understand it. And I realized that the filmmaking is not necessarily, like, it's not to indulge me or to indulge my creativity. It's to be able to inspire, entertain, and affect a bigger audience. And if the film isn't doing that, then I'm just basically, making a movie for my own benefit, and that's never a good way to start making a film. So yeah, that's one thing I've learned, is that, like, collaborating and making sure that the film is accessible and that people can actually connect to what you're trying to put out there.
What are some ways that you do that when you're telling a story? Like, how can you make people connect to it? That was part 1 of my conversation with Peter Lee. Make sure you stay tuned for part 2, only on So Booking Cool. Happy holidays!